Welcome to the Fire Time Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. I'm your host, Tim Reed. And once again, I am so excited to be here. Thank you for listening to the Fire Time Podcast. Now, I mentioned this last week, but I am so excited about these 7 episodes that make up the 7 steps of the retail sales process, because I think that running an effective and repeatable sales process is one of the best things that you can do both for your team members and for your customers. Now, last week, we covered step 1, which was greeting. And it was a great conversation about the things that we need to understand as a salesperson when it comes to making a first impression and how to make a retail customer feel super comfortable when they walk into your showroom. Now, greeting is one of those things that no one else is practicing. And so if you can put some intentional thought and effort into it, your team is going to look like a bunch of rock stars and people are seriously going to be really comfortable with you. And while this doesn't guarantee that you're going to make the sale, it's going to set you up for success significantly better than not putting any thought into it and stumbling your way through that first impression. Now, this week's episode moves on to step 2 of our retail sales process, which is understand their problem. Now, this is, in my opinion, the most important part of the sales process, and it's also the most neglected in our industry. And I think it's because this is one of those steps that is truly a slow is fast kind of thing. This is the part of the sales process where we have to drill down, ask great questions, and listen extremely well so that we can uncover the problem that the customer has. Now, in different sales processes, I've heard this step called discovery or called qualification. And I don't like those words because they're self-serving words. When I hear the word discovery, it makes me think of like, well, what can I discover about you so that I can sell you something? Or qualification is, let me qualify you so that I can sell you something. Understanding is fundamentally different, and these words matter. If you go into a sales situation truly trying to understand the problems that your customer has, you are going to be set up for so much success, and chances are you're going to build a ton of trust along the way. I would actually argue that building trust shouldn't be a step in your sales process, because if you take the time to understand your customer, that will inherently build trust. The fact of the matter is, when we go into a new situation and someone can come alongside, ask us questions, and truly understand our pain and our situation, we automatically build trust with that person, and we are more inclined to listen to their solution. It's the same thing here. Now, I'm really excited about this guest because honestly, ever since I started the podcast, I've been wanting to have Deb on because she just has amazing insight. In my opinion, she is one of the top sales reps I've ever seen, and she truly understands the retail customer experience like a lot of reps don't, because she had her own store for years and years and years. So we'll circle back at the end and dive into some more specifics of what you can be doing to truly work with a customer and understand their problem. But I hope you listen to this interview. This is a gold mine, and I don't want you to miss the insight that Deb has. Joining me from Seattle, Washington is the president of Hannig Marketing, who represents Valor and Z-Flex in the Pacific Northwest. I am joined by Deb Hannig. What's up, Deb? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Tim?
Hey, I'm doing really good. You know, I'm excited that you're on the show. When I started the podcast, I knew I wanted to have an episode with you. I think there's just a ton of value that you're going to be able to bring to the sales process as we're going through that this season, and it's going to be really fun.
I'm really excited.
You know, I was thinking about this, and I'm going to date, I guess, both of us just a little bit here, but I think that we met over 10 years ago. I think it was actually 11 years ago when I was 22 years old. Does that sound right?
It does sound right. It was quite a while ago.
Yep, I remember that. And you were a rep that was instrumental in kind of helping train me and groom me. But I think I've matured a little bit since that time.
I think we both have.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you in particular because I feel like you are one of the few sales reps out there that really understands retail from the ground up. And before we dive into step 2 of our retail sales process, which is understanding the customer, can you give a little bit of backstory into kind of how you understand retail so well and what your upbringing in this industry was?
Well, my family started into retail stores back in the early 70s, and by 1979 we moved into the hearth industry. So I've really been around and in retail that entire time. And then I managed my family store for 11 years here in the Northwest and moved on to become a rep. And so I've been doing that since 2004.
Yeah, and not only being a rep, you also have taught courses at Expo and for different affiliates on the retail sales process, I feel like, and also on showroom design and marketing. And didn't you do work with Tom Pugh as well?
I did. We created a seminar together that was the history of hearth design. So it gave us the introduction of the fireplace back in the year 1000 and moved on forward from there.
That's awesome. And Tom Pugh is someone that I only saw him once, I think, before he passed away. But his name, still, I mean, those are big shoes to fill. He was someone that totally, reshaped our industry at the time, right?
Tom had an incredible grasp on how our industry really was so like every other industry. We want to think that we're specialized and unique. And the truth is, we are in so many ways, but the truth is there are so many pieces of business and marketing that are out there from other, industries that we need to embrace. And Tom was really, really good at imparting that to people in the industry.
And what was the work that you did specifically with him in addition to that course?
We did that system. We worked together doing presentations with Blueprint for Success. So he taught me a tremendous amount about retail, despite the fact that he had never done retail. So I went out and changed my family business immediately after reading it, of course. But we worked together for repping and then continued on with other marketing projects and things throughout the years because we just liked the feedback.
Well, one thing that I really appreciated, especially thinking back to when I first moved up to Portland, like I said, I was about 22. And when I first met you, you were one of the reps that really understood retail. You could actually help me say, here's what to do when a customer says this. I remember having times where you would be sitting across my desk from me, someone would come in and you would come over and join me on the pitch. I specifically remember a time where I was trying to talk to a guy about either a Yodel 400 or 500. And I couldn't get him to decide. And I remember going up to my boss's office. You were up there. I described the situation and you said, well, perfect. Let's go sell him a stove. And you came down with me and you closed the deal. And not many reps can do that. And I'm excited for the voice that you're going to bring because I think it's very, very unique from a sales rep's perspective.
Well, I really enjoyed the process. I think that people are interesting. And I think that a big piece of us being successful in an industry is being really vested in having the consumer having a good experience. It's not about our experience when they walk in the showroom. It's about their experience. And we have to remember that. Yeah,
100%. So Deb, step 2 in the sales process that we're talking about in these first 7 episodes is understand their problem. And this language is really, really intentional. So, I've heard different sales techniques where they'll call it qualification, they'll call it discovery, and those words are fine. But when I think about, qualification, that's a self-serving word. Discovery, well, let me discover enough about you so that I can sell you something. That's a self-serving word in my opinion. Whereas understanding is a word that's centered on the customer. We'll go on to step 3 next week, but step 3 is advise a solution. I can't advise a solution. I can't advise you on anything unless I understand your problem. So as we dive into that here, understanding is one of the most neglected parts of the sales process in our industry. And I hate saying that, but it's just the truth. But I want to ask you, why is it so important to understand the customer's problem before you show them anything?
Well, one of the things that comes up in sales processes all the time is about gaining trust and creating connection. We're selling through relationship. And if we don't stop to understand the consumer's relationship with their problem before we start to hand them a solution, we can take them in a lot of wrong directions, and people just don't take the time to let the consumer get it out. And we try to rush things, and we just move in a lot of different directions, and suddenly 3 steps into the sales process, and sometimes way past step 10, we find out that the setting that we thought they had in the home because they answered 2 brief questions at the beginning is completely different. And now we have to backtrack and move to another group of products. And it basically just destroys the trust in the sales process. And that can end the entire day.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think that anyone who's listening, we can think back of times where we've been 30 minutes to an hour into a sales presentation just to find out one piece of information that derails everything. And, the most classic example, I do a lot of secret shopping. And when I go into a fireplace store, I'll just come in and I'll just say, hey, I'm looking at a fireplace. And I almost always will only get asked 2 questions. Question number 1, are you looking for a built-in or an insert? Now, okay, as a consumer, Deb, does the consumer have any wherewithal to answer that question?
No, they have no idea what either one of those products are.
100%, so none. So I always go, I don't know, I think I'm looking for an insert. And then they go, how many square feet you got? And I'll say, about 2,000 square feet. Okay, perfect. Well, we got inserts over here, and they're 30,000, and they go into the whole thing. So literally, I'll just let them go. And I mean, it can be 30 minutes sometimes when I'll just point out a little piece of information like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I'll get you the information from my contractor so they can frame this right into our wall. And I can just see the look in the salesperson's eyes that's like, are you kidding me? And I'll make him go through it a second time and derail all the momentum. But the point is that, momentum is what keeps things going in a sale. And if you don't understand their problem before you start selling them something, you will kill their momentum.
Absolutely. I think it's important for them to see that you're willing to take the time, get the correct information, and be patient with them. Trying to make them speak our language during their retail experience is very difficult. You can gently correct a customer when they point out that the hearth, which is what they're pointing to on the upper portion of the wall, it's really the mantle. You can gently correct those things, but we have to let them come into that space and feel like we're going to take that information and translate it for them, that they shouldn't be responsible for that. And I think that people get rushed. Yeah,
I think you're right. They definitely get rushed because for us as salespeople, we're used to it. We've seen it a million times. Like, hey, don't bother me with the stuff that doesn't matter. Let's just get right to the chase. But that's not how it is for a customer, right? It's a dating relationship for them. You cannot just run to the marriage altar.
Well, and they need to impart their story. There's a portion of the story that will tell you what the internal process is for them about this purchase. And all that only comes out in their moment and their language and their time. And a lot of times we just want to grab the first 2 nuggets that fall out of their mouth, move on with what we need to do. And part of that is because there's a whole host of things going on behind the desk in retail that the consumer has no idea about. But the truth is they shouldn't know about it. It's meant to be masked, and we need to walk onto that floor and be 100% for that customer.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. I'm probably going to use this example every week for the next 3 weeks in the podcast, but my friend Tim Rethlake, who's been a guest here a few different times, always talks about when he trains. So you think about the natural momentum or evolution of a sale. And so if you think about how you need to understand their problem, then you're going to go advise a solution that's going to work for them. And after that, you're going to try to write up a quote and then eventually close that deal. So you think about those 4 things. Well, which one should take the most amount of time? I wish you guys could see my arms because they're stretched out real far. Understanding the problem should actually take the most amount of time. But now that you understand the problem, guess what? Advising a solution doesn't take as much time. And now that we've advised a solution that's based on the exact problem that they have, guess what? Writing up an estimate, it takes even less time because there's less options. We know it's going to work. And you know what? If we've gotten this kind of momentum, we've done this right, closing the deal takes even less time. Tim Rethlake calls it slow is fast, which is one of the mantras of this podcast. If you don't do that, if you my typical experience when I go secret shopping is it's fast is slow. We're moving to the product fast, but man, we're going to get hung up and things are going to go slow in the back end.
That is completely true. It is a very hard process, but it sounds easy.
Yeah, that's right. So Deb, I want to ask then, why is it so hard to do, and why we all know? I mean, if you go to the doctor's office and the doctor, from the time that you sit down to the time they start diagnosing, only takes 30 seconds and asks you 2 very basic questions, you're going to be really weirded out by that. We know that intellectually, but we don't practice it. Why is it so hard to take the time to understand the customer's problem?
Well, that's interesting. It did happen to me in a doctor's office, and that was a little scary. I was unnerved. So I think that it's hard because we want to impart to the consumer how much education we have and how we can glean information quickly and get them moving forward. And we don't know how long they're planning to spend in the store. And so we add in this intensity. And the truth is, they got in the car, they came to see you, they're in front of you. And it's important to let them get everything out that they need to say. So asking questions, I think that's hard for salespeople to do. It just as hard as it is to say, I don't know. People really struggle with things like that. And standing still and listening to a consumer's story can be lengthy, boring, annoying. But the truth is we have to look for all the nuggets in that are going to get the next part of the process to be super fast.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we talked about offline a little bit, you mentioned how hard it is for salespeople to listen. I mean, it's really hard, isn't it?
It's hard because we're taught as salespeople that we are supposed to be animated, gregarious, extroverts. And the truth is, there's a lot of power in us being quiet and observing, because we can pick up the language between what's going on with a couple, what's happening between them regarding the sale of this fireplace. Is it driven by the woman, her discomfort in the home? Is it driven by the man because he saw a great outdoor fireplace at his buddy's house that everybody wants to go drink beer at on weekends? The observation portion of sales is definitely downplayed too much. And it's hard to stand there and be not salesman-like and just observe, listen, ask a few key questions very quietly, not necessarily taking over their conversation. But we think that we're in a position where we have to lead a consumer at all moments. And we have to take direction before we lead.
Yeah, I think you're right. It goes back to Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, then be understood.
And as my friend Corey Iverson said when I used to work with him at Town & Country, 2 ears, 1 mouth.
There you go. That should tell us something. So what are some things that a team member can do on the floor? If we get really practical here, what can a team member do on the floor to understand the customer's problem better?
I think it's important to ask them about the scenario of their purchase. Asking them what the basis is for this decision. What brings you in today? We all know they're coming in to buy a fireplace, but the truth is we want to present that in a manner that says, what experience are you searching for? People are looking for experiences with fireplaces. I've said this for years. It's just like a hot tub. They think they're buying a group party on the patio when they buy a hot tub, which is rarely true. But the truth is, with a fireplace, they want to have the experience that they see in, old style paintings. They want to see the experience that they see online and people gathering around a linear fireplace with a great big TV over the top and everybody is watching the game together. So they want experiences, and it's important for us to ask the questions about what that experience really is. I mean, what's the basis for starting this search that they're on? Did they see something on HGTV? Have they been in a friend's home that really made them feel comfortable? Did they stay in a beautiful bed and breakfast on the East Coast and they're after that look and that feeling? So by doing that, it doesn't change the product group that you have available to you, but what it does do is change the way that you present to them. Because we have to be chameleons. We have to present in a way that resonates with every customer. And that's not possible unless we actually get to know the customer first.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I want to bounce this off of you. What do you think about a salesperson having a pen and a piece of paper with them?
I don't think it's bad if you're going to utilize it in a way that relays to the customer, I'm going to play this back for you. I'm going to take a few notes here. I'm going to, explain to you what you've said to me so that we can all be clear and have a really good starting point. So if you're going to utilize it, that's perfect. If you're going to make a grocery list with it, leave it behind.
Yeah. This is something that I'm kind of bullish on is I think that one of the most useful tools that we have is an understanding form. Where literally it's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. It's got some basic questions. Some are open-ended, some are closed-ended, some are, lifestyle questions, some are more, technically oriented. And I mean, I've gotten pushback for it where people are like, well, no, I'm not a robot. And no, I can't appear like I'm stiff and just use this form. And I honestly am like, well, dude, freaking get over yourself. Like, the reality is, if a customer comes in, they've never bought a fireplace before, and this is a complex purchase that could burn down their house and hurt their family. That's the reality of it. There is apprehension. They don't know what it should cost. They've never done this before. So I feel like if I'm a consumer, would I rather have the experience of someone that asks me 2 questions? Do you want a built-in or a insert? How many square feet you got? And I'm off to the races, being, BTUs and technology just being shoved down my throat. Would I rather have that experience, or would I rather have a salesperson go through the greeting that we talked about last week and then say, hey, Tim, it's super nice to meet you. I'm really glad that you're here. Buying a fireplace can be difficult because there's all kinds of options out there, and there's a lot of complexity to it because every situation is a little bit different. I would love to learn a little bit about your home to make sure that we can recommend the perfect fireplace for you. Would you mind if I just asked you a couple questions?
I think that the usage of a list can be productive because the consumer now knows that you're going to retain the information. If a salesman can incorporate it well and smoothly into the way that they're going to interact, then it can be really positive. If they're going to become rigid and make it feel like it's a checklist and difficulty trying to really calmly relate to the consumer, then I think it has to go away. I've seen people be really successful with it. I've seen other folks fail because they let the list control the sale.
Sure, that's right. It's a tool to help the sale. And I think it honestly means you got to practice, doesn't it?
You do. You need to figure out how you're going to work around those things and create questions, I guess, for the consumer so that they can answer you in a really comfortable way rather than feeling like it's rote.
Yeah, and I guess I feel like just for me, I know that for me as a consumer, I feel so valued. Like, we had a remodel done in our house, and when the contractor that we decided on finally, when he came in and listened to us, what do you want out of this addition? He's taking notes. He's making observations. I'm telling you, I felt so valued compared to if they just keep it in their head. Like, I'm really bullish on this. Use a notepad and obviously practice it, get smooth at it. But I think when you compare that to what everybody else is doing, it makes you look like such a professional. And down the road, even if all you remember is their name, and like that could benefit you so much down the road just to have that information handy.
This goes back to where I see sales coming from is a relationship standpoint. I think it's important to remember that consumers don't want to give money to businesses. They want to give money to people. Money is very personal, it's very private, and it's very emotional. So they want to feel like you're vested in the fact that they are going to be giving away their hard-earned money to you for something that they know nothing about, and yet they have this magical experience in their mind that they're going to have. And to help them get there, it's important to be human.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I want to jump into this, Deb. What happens as a salesperson when you don't understand the customer's problem and you just jump straight into selling?
Well, I think it's a bad experience for the consumer because we end up doing an information dump where we just start throwing all these numbers at them because we assume that every store that they've been in has done exactly the same thing and my information needs to beat their information. So we get in this competitive mode about our, a retailer down the street that we're dealing with. And the truth is they may have never been there. I often ask a consumer, have you already been shopping for this product? I don't want to be too repetitive for you. Are there things that I can highlight for you and then we can move on from that? But the other thing is that they end up with wrong appliances. They end up with buyer's remorse. There's a lot of different things. If we don't focus on what their actual objections and feelings are about this process, and yes, I did say feelings, then we can get into trouble when we go to close the sale because they're saying yes to something that they may not really be comfortable with.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, some people in my family were uncomfortable with pilot lights until I rushed them into putting gas stoves into their houses. And the next thing you know, I show up and they're all turned off all the time.
Yeah.
So I think they're broken. I grab a toolkit from my truck and finally they all admit, we've been turning it off, Deb, because we just weren't comfortable with the pilot light.
Wow.
So that's very short-sighted on my part that I just went, oh, hey, you just need this.
Yeah. And I wonder too, I think every sales rep, this is why I'm such a big fan of the understanding form, but I think that every sales rep needs to have just a handful of questions in their back pocket that they're ready for. I mean, honestly, customers will tell you their problem if you ask good questions. If you ask bad questions that seem self-serving, no one's going to listen to you. And this is where I've had people say, well, I don't, customers get mad at me when I ask them all these questions. I think I'm just trying to, and I'm like, no, like I see you shaking your head, right?
Well, a lot of that is about how you ask the question.
Yes.
It's not, so do you have how many square feet? And, do you have an open fireplace? There's some really creative ways to pose questions and create open-ended, what experience do you want to have with this product? So do you have an old drafty fireplace? Make it entertaining. It's a story.
Yeah.
And you presenting it as a story where they're filling in the blanks like a children's book makes it a lot more engaging than you just saying, so how many square feet do you want to heat?
Yes, you just hit that on the head. And I think that it is about the way that we communicate. And I feel like the preface, I mean, if you give the preface and you say, I know it seems like I'm asking a lot of questions, but this is really helping me understand your situation so that we can make the perfect recommendation for you. Can I ask you just a couple more? Who's going to say no to that? I mean, honestly, it'd be like a doctor saying, hey, I think I understand your situation. I know it's taken a little while, but you know what? I've got just 2 more questions, and this is going to really help me make the right diagnosis for you. Are you going to say, no, we've wasted too much time. You just diagnosed me. Send me into surgery.
I think that being engaging in that way is really important. Your story is important to me, and you're going to spend a lot of money building this into your wall, and it's probably going to live there on average 25 years. So let's take our time.
Totally. And I think as long as you frame it this is really the message of everything in the sales process. Make everything about their best interests.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you can frame your questions showing them that this is in their best interest, they're going to answer them and they're going to tell you the problem.
Well, the attitude that we need to have going into a sale is that we'd like them to have such a great experience. They come back and do it again.
100%.
Or send someone else that they know to do the same thing. Again, I'll say it again, it's relationships, and they're long-term relationships. This may not be the only appliance that they buy from you. We don't know how many houses they own. We don't know how many people they know.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Well, I want to shift. So far we've been talking about business to consumer sales, B2C. I want to shift to B2B, business to business, because there's a lot of people in this audience that work for distributors, they're sales reps, they work for manufacturers, or they're selling to builders. So in a B2B context, I mean, I'm just going to go out there and say it. Most reps have no idea what my problems are as a dealer, and they're not interested in selling me solutions. We can dive into that deeper in a little bit, but most reps don't have a clue of my true problems. They're just interested in whatever their agenda is. How do you approach things differently?
I think the consumer's problems are the dealer's problems. And so we have to present to you how our products will help to solve those real-world issues. Everything can look great on paper, and the literature is wonderful. The log set is gorgeous. All those different features are wonderful, but if they don't solve the real world problems that you're having, then we don't really have a place on your showroom.
Sure.
So it's important for us to understand the type of pushback that you would get from a consumer, how to handle the questions that you're getting on our products, and how to teach yourself and the consumer how a product will save you time, be excellent in different areas, whether that's efficiency or venting prowess or whatever it is. That's our job to help you work that into your repertoire.
So if you're setting up a new dealer, what kind of time do you spend with them kind of diagnosing the services that you can offer? How do you do that?
I actually have an entire presentation that's focused just on the problems that my products solve.
Oh, awesome.
Because those are the real questions I'm going to get later. Can this vent 16 feet out to the left? Can it, turn right at that moment? And can I add 16 more 90s? Those types of questions that you bring to me as retailers always help me to know what's happening out in the field. So that's why I don't give out the number to the tech department every 5 minutes. I actually want to be in the middle of that so that the next person can learn how to use those tools. But everything's a problem-solving process. I solve your problem for you. You solve the problem for the consumer. We all work together as a team to do that.
Now, one thing that I want to go out on a limb and say is that Valor was really smart with a piece of marketing that they made years ago with their heat shift system. And they found the problem of the consumer, which is that fireplaces are hot. Duh. TVs don't like to get hot, but people like TVs close to fireplaces. They found the problem of the consumer. They had this heat shift technology that addressed a solution. And that solution actually wasn't unique to Valor. There's companies that were doing that for, years. And maybe I should say there's companies that were doing something similar to it for years and years and years before, but no one understood how to talk to a consumer about it until Valor came out with this marketing piece. It was brilliant. It had this gradient line that went from blue to red. It showed the degrees that your TV is, and it was simple. It was a graphic that absolutely identified the customer's problem. It presented a solution. It took like 2 seconds to understand it. I'm assuming, there's been some success that you guys have had because of that, right?
Oh, I think that it was a fabulous piece of marketing. We have a video that's based on the same platform, and I took it to a home show when it first came out, and it has no sound. It's just video running above the fireplace on a television. And a consumer, as I approached them, actually pointed at the screen and turns to me and said, "Can you believe all the problems that this solves?" and,
No way.
and the retailer was behind me going, "Oh my goodness." And so it was so exciting at that moment to see that it didn't take a full sales pitch. It was just the graphic itself that solved their problem. And they were so excited about it. Obviously we had them written up for a quote within the next 15 minutes. I think that it turned something complicated into something really simple and clear. And I just can't pick up a piece of our literature that doesn't have it in there and utilize it anymore. So everything had to be replaced immediately.
Well, as a consumer, you think about, at this point now, there's a million companies that are trying to do something similar to that. And everyone's got it figured out in different ways. Yeah. But I'm not joking. No one's talking about it like Valor. And so if I'm a consumer and I'm going to different websites, and I see that there's this weird looking louver above the fireplace, but I get this technical drawing showing tubes and arrows for hot air and cold air. And I don't get it as a consumer, but I go to Valor's website and it instantly makes me feel like, oh, this helps the TV stay really close, and this is exactly how they do it. I'm in. You've solved my problem. And the fact that you're the one company that has understood my problem buys you equity with your branding, where everybody else, they just got facts and features that don't matter to me.
I think it helps tremendously. Every manufacturer has some feature of their product that they market extremely well, and this has really been a boon for us. Obviously, radiant heat is the other one that we've focused on so heavily. So it's been a big piece, and especially with the linear market. So it's been a lot of fun to work with that and just see how people really resonate with it.
That's awesome. Well, Deb, so for years, you have been one of the few sales reps I've seen that's an amazing sales trainer. I've had other reps on in the past, Tim Rethlake, Kip and Ed. There are some reps out there that are great sales trainers, but not many. And I feel like whether you have consciously done it or not, you have always focused on the internal motivations of the customer. And StoryBrand talks about how a customer's problem exists at multiple levels. In particular, there's an external problem, and there's actually a deeper internal problem that's like the real motivation for why they buy. And I feel like you have always kind of honed in on that. But isn't it the truth that people buy for internal reasons, not external?
No, that's completely true. So again, outdoor fireplaces have become a huge hit.
There you go.
And that's really about creating a new gathering space for your family. Nobody wants their kids to go out into the world in the evening. They want to keep them home and invite their friends over, or invite all the adult friends over and hang out outside. And so it's important for us to find what these internal motivations are. And I think that this is where the relationship building piece, again, comes into the sale. I'm building a relationship because I want to know your internal feelings about this issue. What drives you. I'd really like to buy something incredibly unique for my home that's different from everyone else's, and suddenly, you're buying at one of the top end fireplaces in the industry and it didn't have anything to do with price. It was really about something truly unique or something that's practical, and that consumer will tell you.
Yeah. And I think about just my own experience. So we had an addition built to our house, like a bonus room on top of our garage about 2.5 years ago. And we got a suite linear fireplace for it. And my motivation is, well, we're having more kids, so we're running out of rooms. We needed a space where, like, my mother-in-law or my parents or someone could stay for an extended period of time. And I want this to be super cozy for them. And I want it to look awesome. Like, I want them to feel like this is paradise coming over to Tim and Jessica's house, because I get to stay in this awesome room. It's kind of secluded from the house. I get this amazing fire. Like, that was my motivation. So, you could look at this and say, well, yeah, Tim, but that's just needs and wants-based selling. That's what everybody knows. You sell on needs and wants, not on the product. Well, yeah, it is, but no one does it. Like, why do we talk about BTUs and vertical termination and, whatever kind of proprietary information your burner is called? Like, I don't care about that. Like, what I want is this. Like, I want someone to say, Tim, you're not going to believe how amazing this looks. Your family and guests are never going to want to leave your house. That's the problem that I have, and that's the reason that I'm buying it. And whoever can engage me at that level has a good shot at winning my business.
And again, this means listening, getting all the way through what the external problems are to the internal problem, creating that personal connection with these consumers so that you can get through all of the layers of practicality and get down to the emotion of the sale. Money's emotional. The product is emotional. And we don't want to think that that's in there, but it's generally an emotion that drives the internal sale.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think about this. I would imagine that a lot of people skip this step because they're too busy to get to know the customer. Like you said, there's a bunch of stuff going on behind the desk. Life is crazy, especially if you hit us in, October, November, December. And so it's because they're too busy. And also it's because there's a fear of rejection. Like, if I start to get to know you too well, you could reject me. Or you could think that I'm just a salesperson that's trying to get to know you to sell you. Like, we tell ourselves all kinds of, crazy things. But the way that I feel is, understanding the customer's problem at the surface level, but also their deeper interior motivations for buying. I mean, this is honestly like the reason that we're a local business, in a lot of cases family owned. Like, this is the only edge that we have over Amazon, isn't it? Like, why wouldn't we push into that?
Absolutely it is. When consumers walk into the front door of a showroom, there's a lot of different reactions that happen at the front desk. Some of them are annoyance. Some of them are pleasure. Some of them are intrigue. This person looks incredibly interesting. I want to get up and help them. And we have to remember that the consumer has those reactions as well. And so we have to engage with them. And they, again, have taken the time to come into a showroom. And we think that we're only engaging with the person in front of us, which is completely untrue. So one of my experiences in retail after I went away was that one of my employees called me back and said, "I'm really sick of hearing your name." And I said, I have no idea what we're talking about right now. And he said, "People keep coming in and saying, 'Where's Debbie? We need to talk to Debbie. And when can we meet with her? She doesn't work here.' They tried to explain. And they're saying, 'But she knows how to solve our problem. She knew how to solve our cousin's problem, our sister's problem, our child's teacher's problem.'" They carry a cell phone with them. And average people have about 100 phone numbers in that cell phone. And you are selling to every person in that phone. Their contacts list is really what you're after. And if you will reach deep enough with a consumer and get to this personal level with them, you don't have to go to dinner with them. You're not taking them on a date, but you do want to let them know that you have a desire to know them, to know their problem, to solve their problem, and to make them happy for a lifetime. And that will get you the phone list.
Oh,
and they'll do it all for you.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think you're exactly right. And I mean, I'm going to shift real quick to marketing. I know that we're talking about this in the sales process, but man, when we're marketing to customers, that's the silent sale. When customers go to your website, when customers first interact with your brand, when they see your truck driving by, they actually need to know that you understand their problem. They do. Honestly, like, they don't want to drive by and see your truck that says quality service and installation since 1977. They want a truck that's got a picture of a happy family in front of the fireplace that says your home deserves a beautiful fireplace. That's what they want to see. That should be on your website. That should be on your truck. That should be on your business card. That should be in your brochures. Happy people, so customers can look at it and say they understand my problem. They're showing me the life that I want.
I think that there's some strength in focusing on the satisfaction that's after the sale. not just the servicing of the sale process. And we don't advertise to that piece.
No, we don't. And it just goes back to the problem. I mean, again, I can go to Amazon to see BTUs and to see technical jargon and installation manuals and things like that. But Amazon doesn't understand my problem. As a local business, in every bit of interaction with a customer, you have to do the hard work of showing them, I understand your problem. I've been there before. I can show you the way.
Well, and a great example of this is that we have people calling in to hearth stores all the time asking about electric fireplaces that they saw on Amazon.
There you go.
So there's not even enough information there about a box with a cord.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, Deb, it's been amazing having you on the show today. I want to just thank you for your time. You're speaking to dealers all over the U.S. and Canada right now. And I want to ask you kind of what parting words do you have for someone, maybe they're new in the industry, they're trying to figure this out. There's all kinds of confusing jargon and technical information to learn, which is very important, but they're in a tough spot. What would you say to someone on just how to connect with customers and understand what they need?
I think it's important to remember why you got up and went to work in the morning. And part of it is because we enjoy people. And if you start with that every day in the morning and you enjoy that person who walks through the front door rather than feeling annoyed by them being present in the shop while you have paperwork to do, I think it changes your whole perception of the day. And the consumer can feel that. So remember that you got into this process because you enjoy people. Sales is all about that. And when we forget that piece, we lose it.
It's the truth. Sales is service. We can't forget that. Deb, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining us on the Fire Time Podcast.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you later. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I honestly loved getting to sit down with Deb, and I was taking a ton away from that conversation. A couple things to think about as we're rounding out the episode here. Number one is I want to just reiterate that understanding the customer's problem is the most important and most neglected part of the sales process. People are so quick to jump to solutions. They are so quick to do it, and you can't take the bait. You have to slow down and understand their problem. Otherwise, the solutions you offer are not going to matter. More on that next week. So what can we do if we want to get really practical and try to understand a customer situation? Number one, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That should tell us something. When you're understanding a customer, you need to be listening a lot. Another key to understanding is to remember that sales is service. At the end of the day, we should be selling things to people whose lives will be better because they buy those things. And we should be going into this thinking about how can I understand this customer so that I can serve them, as opposed to how can I discover the things that I need to leverage it into my sales presentation. Do not do that. Remember that sales is service. If you go into understanding with a servant's heart, it's going to change everything. Now, getting really practical, I think there's 3 types of questions that are really, really important to ask. One of them is open questions. I think one of the best things you can do to a customer when they come in is just say, tell me about your house. Or, so how do you use this space? Open-ended questions like that where you let the customer talk are really, really important. Now, there is a time and place where you need to ask the next type of question, which is a directed question. And this is not open-ended. This is when you actually do need an answer. So an idea might be you need to figure out how steep their roof is, if it's something that you can get on or not. Or you need to know if the house is on an inside wall or an outside wall. Or, classic example, you need to know if they've got a brick fireplace or if they've got a ZC fireplace. Now, the thing to do when you're asking a directed question is they don't necessarily know the answers, so give them multiple choice options and talk with your hands. Now, the next kind of question that you should be thinking about is what I'd call a connecting question. And this is going to be anytime a customer gives you a piece of information that can be used to build a bridge of trust and camaraderie. So these could be things where if a customer drops the hint that they've got a dog, ask them about that dog. If you're a dog lover, tell them about it. If the customer mentions that they like to have Super Bowl parties in that room, ask them who they have over. Talk about the Super Bowl from last year. very often what I hear salespeople do is a customer will mention 3 or 4 pieces of personal information, and the salesperson is just all business, all business, all business, and they just keep going to the next thing. But what happens is they think they're being respectful of the customer by not getting into their personal stuff, but there is a way to do this with tact that will actually buy credibility for yourself and start to build trust and rapport that you'd never have if you just kept it all business, business, business. The reason is that people buy for emotional reasons. They really do. And all things being equal, they'd probably rather buy from someone that they like and that they trust from someone that they don't. Now, another thing to remember is going to be the idea of the sales shotgun. And this goes back to Zig Ziglar. And I'm going to modify what he says just a little bit. But the idea is the customer's got a problem. It's the only reason that they're coming in to see you. You're trying to understand it. So as you ask these questions, you listen really well, you make some parenthetical remarks to clarify what they say, you're going to start to uncover the customer's problems. And as you start to understand the specific problems that the customer has, you're actually able to load a round of ammunition into the sales shotgun. And this is really important, and this is why you need to dive deep on understanding, because once that sales shotgun gets 2 or 3 rounds in it, it starts to get really powerful. Now, next week, when we talk about step 3 in the sales process, which is advise a solution, this all has to do with taking the sales shotgun, which is loaded with the information you've gotten from the customer, and pointing it at their problem and firing away. Now, you're not pointing it at the customer, but as you gain this information, you and the customer are together pointing the sales shotgun at their problem, and you've got enough ammunition in there to blow the problem out of the water. But what happens is if you don't take the time to understand, when you go to advise a solution and start actually talking about the products that you sell, none of it's been connected to the problems that they have, and so it just becomes information and not anything that makes them compelled to buy from you. So we're going to talk about that more next week, but remember, in the understanding phase of the sales process, you are loading the sales shotgun. Lastly, one of the most important things that you can do when you're trying to understand the customer's problem is to summarize everything they've told you and then ask them for permission to present. So a great thing to do is to say something like, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it's been amazing talking with you. I feel like I've gotten just a great understanding of what you have going on. Now, if I'm correct, it sounds like your home's about 2,500 square feet. You mentioned that it's 2 levels, and on the bottom, you're actually really, really warm, and on top, it's kind of cold because of those big single-pane windows that you had. I know you said that you had gas run to the fireplace a number of years ago, but nothing's really been done with it. And after talking, it sounds like you're really looking for something that's going to take the chill off upstairs and make it to where your furnace doesn't run 24/7 and make your downstairs way too warm like it is right now. Is that a fair understanding of what you have? They will tell you yes or no. If they tell you yes, you can say, that's great. We've got the perfect solution for you. Do you mind if I show you what it is? Summarize and ask for permission. Now, if you're trying to figure out how to do this, how do I remember these questions? Which time should I ask connecting questions, open questions, or directed questions? Honestly, this is what I would do. I'm going to say it. Most companies don't do this, and even if companies offer it, most salespeople don't take advantage of it, and it is to their detriment. Make an understanding form. Do this. Make a 1-page piece of paper that's got 10 questions written on it and use it with every single customer like clockwork. Again, I'm telling you, not many salespeople do this, but if you practice it, it is so effective. Because again, going back to the analogy that we talked about with Deb, if you go to the doctor and your ankle hurts, and the doctor listens to you for 10 seconds and then starts prescribing, they lose credibility. It is the same thing with you. What you should be doing after you go through this amazing greeting process with the customer is you should say, hey, I would love to learn a little bit about your situation so that I can recommend the right fireplace for you. Do you mind if we have a seat and just go through a couple of questions real fast? Take them over to your desk, get them a cup of coffee, and go through this form. Now, you don't have to be robotic. You can skip questions as the conversation allows, but that form, I'm telling you, will build so much credibility, and it's something that you can look back on later in the sales process for key information that you can use to load the sales shotgun and blow their problem out of the water. So I hope that this episode has been amazing for you. I love the chance to dive deep on this, and I am positive that if you implement the things that we are talking about today, this can make a monumental difference in the success that you and your sales team has. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the week, and I am so excited to talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Fire Time Podcast. To learn more, visit the website itsfiretime.com. Music from this episode was written and recorded by In Bloom out of Portland, Oregon. We thank you for listening to the Fire Time Podcast, where it's never hot enough, slow is fast, and the way to win is to make it so stupidly easy to buy from you that there's no excuse not to. We'll see you next time.
All in to burn.